Guilt and obligation, the invisible leash. Guilt-based influence exploits the human desire to be seen as moral and responsible. Phrases like, "After all I've done for you," activate emotional debt. The mind seeks emotional balance. To relieve guilt, people often comply, even against their interests. Recognizing this pattern restores personal boundaries and emotional independence. Intermittent reinforcement. Addiction without substance. One of the most powerful psychological conditioning tools is intermittent reinforcement. Unpredictable rewards. This is the same mechanism behind gambling, social media addiction, and toxic relationships. The brain releases more dopamine when rewards are uncertain. Ethical awareness of this explains why people stay attached to inconsistent approval and unstable systems. Dehumanization. Reducing empathy to justify harm. Dehumanization strips individuals or groups of identity and complexity. By labeling others as inferior or dangerous, the mind reduces empathy and moral responsibility. This reveals how language shapes morality. Ethical psychology teaches that when empathy disappears, manipulation becomes easier and harm becomes acceptable. Authority and obedience. When morality is outsourced, people often surrender personal judgment to authority figures. Psychological experiments show that individuals may harm others when instructed by perceived authority. The mind equates authority with legitimacy. Ethical understanding restores responsibility to the individual, emphasizing that obedience does not remove moral accountability. Information control. Limiting choice by limiting knowledge. Controlling information controls perception. When people only receive selective narratives, their decisions feel free, but are constrained. The mind cannot question what it cannot see. Ethical awareness emphasizes the importance of diverse information sources and critical thinking. Mind tricks that reveal how people think. Have you ever wondered why people behave the way they do? Why some individuals instantly command respect? Why others reveal their secrets without realizing it, or why first impressions are so powerful? Human behavior is not random. In fact, much of how people think, feel, and decide is shaped by subtle psychological patterns that operate beneath conscious awareness. These mental shortcuts, emotional triggers, and cognitive biases quietly influence everyday interactions. Today, we will explore powerful mind tricks that reveal how people truly think, often without them saying a single word. The human brain is designed to conserve energy. Instead of carefully analyzing every situation, it relies on mental shortcuts known as heuristics. These shortcuts help us make quick decisions, but they also expose our hidden thoughts, fears, and motivations. By understanding these mind tricks, you gain insight not only into others but also into yourself. Silence makes people reveal more than words. One of the most powerful psychological tools is silence. When a conversation suddenly pauses, most people feel uncomfortable. The human brain is wired to seek closure, so silence creates psychological tension. To relieve that discomfort, people often speak more than they intended to. Interrogators, therapists, and skilled negotiators all use this trick. After asking a question, they remain silent. The other person, assuming their answer was insufficient, continues talking, and often reveals deeper truths. Silence pressures the mind into filling the gap, exposing genuine thoughts that scripted responses would normally hide. Eye contact reveals confidence and deception. Eye contact is a window into the mind. Strong, steady eye contact often signals confidence, honesty, and engagement. However, excessive or forced eye contact can indicate manipulation or an attempt to dominate. On the other hand, avoiding eye contact may suggest discomfort, anxiety, or concealment, but not always dishonesty. Interestingly, liars don't always avoid eye contact. Many overcompensate by staring intensely because they believe honesty equals eye contact. Observing blinking rate, pupil dilation, and microexpressions provides deeper clues about what a person is really thinking. People trust you more when you admit small weaknesses. Perfection creates distance, but vulnerability builds trust. When someone admits a small flaw or minor mistake, others perceive them as more human and relatable. This psychological effect, known as the pratfall effect, shows that competence combined with imperfection increases likability. People subconsciously think, If they can admit this, they're probably honest about bigger things too. This reveals how the human mind values authenticity over flawlessness. We trust those who feel real, not those who appear untouchable. First impressions shape long-term thinking. Within seconds of meeting someone, the brain forms an opinion, and then actively looks for evidence to confirm it. This is called confirmation bias. Once a first impression is formed, people interpret future behavior in a way that supports that initial judgment. If someone appears confident at first meeting, even their mistakes are later excused. If someone seems awkward initially, even their successes are overlooked. This trick reveals how people don't see reality as it is, but as they expect it to be. Mirroring builds instant psychological connection. When you subtly mirror someone's posture, tone, or gestures, their brain perceives familiarity and safety. This is rooted in evolutionary psychology. Humans trust those who seem similar to them. Mirroring happens naturally between close friends and couples, but when used intentionally, it creates rapid rapport. People feel understood without knowing why. Their mind interprets similarity as agreement, making them more open and cooperative. People reveal priorities through complaints. Listen carefully to what people complain about repeatedly. Complaints are not random. They reveal unmet expectations and deeply held values. Someone who complains about disrespect values status and recognition. Someone who complains about time values freedom and control. What irritates a person most often exposes what they care about most. The human mind fixates on perceived threats to its core priorities. The illusion of choice controls decisions. People feel empowered when they believe they are choosing freely. However, offering limited options subtly directs decisions while preserving the illusion of autonomy. For example, asking "would you like option A or B?" removes the possibility of refusal entirely. The mind prefers choice over force, even when outcomes are predesigned. This reveals how people resist control, but willingly accept guidance disguised as freedom. Emotional memory is stronger than logical memory. The brain does not remember facts, it remembers feelings. People may forget what you said, but they never forget how you made them feel. Emotional experiences activate deeper memory centers, making them more lasting and influential. This is why storytelling is more persuasive than data. When emotions are involved, people internalize ideas as personal truth. Understanding this reveals why emotional appeal often overrides logic in decision-making. Body language speaks louder than words. Words can lie, but the body struggles to do so consistently. Crossed arms may signal defensiveness, leaning forward suggests interest, and feet pointing toward an exit often indicate discomfort or desire to leave. Microexpressions, brief, involuntary facial movements, reveal suppressed emotions such as fear, anger, or contempt. These flashes last less than a second, but they expose the mind's true reaction before social filters activate. People seek validation more than truth. Most individuals do not want to be challenged, they want to be understood. The brain protects self-identity by resisting information that threatens beliefs. This is why people gravitate toward opinions that validate them, even if they are incorrect. When someone feels heard and validated, they become more open to influence. This reveals how emotional acceptance often precedes intellectual openness. Names trigger attention and trust. Hearing one's own name activates specific brain regions linked to identity. When you use someone's name, their attention increases, and they feel personally acknowledged. This simple trick strengthens connection and signals respect. The human mind associates its name with importance, making people feel seen and valued. Scarcity increases desire instantly. When something feels limited, the brain assigns it higher value. Scarcity triggers fear of loss, which is psychologically stronger than desire for gain. This is why phrases like limited time or only a few left are so powerful. People don't just want scarce things, they fear missing out on them. This reveals how loss aversion dominates human thinking. Confidence influences perceived intelligence. People often confuse confidence with competence. A confident speaker is perceived as more knowledgeable, even if their information is average. Meanwhile, hesitant delivery undermines even accurate ideas. The brain equates certainty with authority. This reveals how presentation often outweighs content in shaping beliefs. Repetition creates belief. The more often people hear something, the more familiar and therefore true it feels. This is known as the illusory truth effect. Repetition reduces mental effort, and the brain mistakes ease of processing for accuracy. This explains why slogans, headlines, and repeated narratives shape public opinion so effectively. People reveal themselves when they think no one is watching. True personality emerges in moments of perceived anonymity, how people treat service staff, respond to inconvenience, or behave when there are no consequences. The mind relaxes social masks when accountability disappears. Observing these moments reveals authentic character more accurately than public behavior. Understanding these mind tricks is not about manipulation, it's about awareness. When you recognize how the human mind operates, you communicate better, build stronger relationships, and protect yourself from unconscious influence. People are not as unpredictable as they seem. Beneath every conversation, gesture, and decision lies a psychological pattern waiting to be understood. Once you learn to see these patterns, you don't just hear what people say, you understand how they think. Human thinking is not as rational as we like to believe. Most decisions are driven by unconscious psychological mechanisms that evolved to help us survive, not to help us think logically. Modern psychology reveals that our thoughts are shaped by biases, emotional shortcuts, and social conditioning. These mental processes operate silently, influencing judgments before logic ever enters the picture. Cognitive dissonance, the mind's defense mechanism. When people hold two conflicting beliefs, the mind experiences psychological discomfort known as cognitive dissonance. To reduce this discomfort, individuals often change their beliefs rather than their behavior. For example, a person who knows smoking is harmful but continues to smoke may convince themselves that the risks are exaggerated. This reveals a powerful truth. People do not seek truth, they seek mental comfort. The mind prioritizes consistency over accuracy, reshaping reality to protect self-image. The halo effect. One trait controls everything. The halo effect occurs when one positive trait, such as attractiveness, confidence, or success, leads people to assume other positive qualities. A well-dressed person is perceived as more intelligent. A charismatic speaker is seen as more competent. The brain simplifies complex judgments by generalizing from a single visible trait. This shortcut exposes how quickly and unconsciously people form opinions about others. Projection. Revealing the self through others. People often project their own thoughts, fears, and desires onto others without realizing it. Someone who frequently accuses others of dishonesty may be struggling with their own integrity. Projection allows the mind to externalize uncomfortable emotions instead of confronting them. By listening to accusations and assumptions, you can often uncover what someone is internally dealing with. The mind reveals itself while trying to hide. Loss aversion. Fear drives decisions more than desire. Psychological research shows that people fear losses more than they value equivalent gains. Losing $100 feels more painful than the pleasure of gaining $100. This principle, known as loss aversion, dominates human decision-making. This explains why people stay in unhappy jobs, unhealthy relationships, or failing systems, because the fear of loss feels greater than the hope of improvement. Anchoring bias. First information controls thinking. The anchoring effect occurs when the first piece of information becomes a reference point for all future judgments. If someone hears a high number first, everything that follows feels reasonable by comparison. This reveals how initial exposure shapes perception. The mind clings to the first anchor, even when it is irrelevant or misleading. Social proof, the herd mentality. People often look to others to decide what is correct, especially in uncertain situations. If many people believe something, the mind assumes it must be true. This is known as social proof. Trends, viral content, and mass behavior rely on this psychological principle. The mind equates popularity with correctness, revealing how deeply social influence shapes beliefs. The self-serving bias, protecting the ego. When people succeed, they credit their abilities. When they fail, they blame external factors. This self-serving bias protects self-esteem and reduces emotional discomfort. The mind reshapes reality to maintain a positive self-image. Understanding this reveals why accountability is rare and why people struggle to accept responsibility. The need for control, an illusion the mind creates. Humans have a deep psychological need to feel in control. Even when control is minimal or non-existent, the mind creates illusions of influence to reduce anxiety. Superstitions, rituals, and routines are examples of this mechanism. They don't change reality, but they calm the mind. Confirmation bias, the mind filters reality. Once people form a belief, they selectively search for information that confirms it and ignore evidence that contradicts it. This confirmation bias strengthens existing opinions and polarizes thinking. The mind does not passively receive information, it actively defends identity-based beliefs. The spotlight effect, overestimating attention. People believe others are constantly watching and judging them. In reality, everyone is focused on themselves. This spotlight effect creates unnecessary anxiety and self-consciousness. Understanding this reveals how much mental energy is wasted on imagined judgment. Authority bias, obedience over reason. People tend to obey authority figures, even when instructions conflict with personal values. Titles, uniforms, and status symbols trigger automatic compliance. This reveals how the mind associates authority with correctness, often bypassing critical thinking. The endowment effect, ownership changes value. People value things more once they own them. Even identical objects feel more valuable when they are mine. This endowment effect explains resistance to change and reluctance to let go. The mind links identity to possession, making loss feel personal. The need for meaning, the mind hates randomness. Humans are meaning-making creatures. The brain prefers patterns, even false ones, over uncertainty. This explains belief in fate, conspiracy theories, and symbolic interpretations. The mind would rather believe a comforting story than accept randomness. Psychological manipulation, how influence becomes control. Manipulation occurs when influence bypasses informed consent. Unlike healthy persuasion, manipulation exploits emotional vulnerabilities such as fear, guilt, or insecurity. The human mind is particularly susceptible when under stress, fatigue, or uncertainty. Understanding manipulation reveals a critical truth. People are easiest to influence when they are emotionally exhausted. Ethical awareness begins with recognizing moments when rational thinking is compromised. Gaslighting, distorting reality to gain power. Gaslighting is a psychological tactic where a person systematically makes another doubt their memory, perception, or sanity. Over time, the victim begins to rely on the manipulator's version of reality. This works because the brain values certainty. When internal confidence erodes, external authority replaces it. Ethical understanding of gaslighting helps individuals protect their sense of reality and trust their cognitive processes. Love bombing, intensity as a tool of dependency. Love bombing involves overwhelming someone with excessive attention, affection, or praise early in a relationship. While it feels positive, the psychological impact creates emotional dependency. The mind associates intensity with connection. When affection is later withdrawn, the brain experiences emotional withdrawal similar to addiction. Awareness helps distinguish genuine connection from psychological control. Fear-based influence, controlling through threat perception. Fear is one of the strongest motivators in the human mind. Dark psychological influence often exaggerates threats to push people toward compliance. When fear dominates, the brain shifts from analytical thinking to survival mode. Ethically understanding this reveals why calm thinking disappears under pressure, and why decisions made in fear rarely reflect true values. Emotional manipulation through identity. When beliefs become tied to identity, questioning them feels like a personal attack. Manipulators exploit this by framing ideas as who you are rather than what you think. The mind defends identity fiercely. Ethical psychology separates self-worth from belief systems, allowing growth without emotional threat. The illusion of moral superiority. Dark psychology often disguises control as righteousness. When individuals believe they are morally superior, they justify manipulation as for your own good. The mind seeks moral clarity, but ethical awareness reminds us that certainty without empathy becomes dangerous. Trauma bonding. Pain that feels like connection. Trauma bonding occurs when cycles of abuse and affection create strong emotional attachment. The brain confuses relief from pain with love. Understanding this reveals why leaving toxic situations feels psychologically painful, even when logically necessary. The slow erosion of boundaries. Manipulation rarely begins with extremes. It starts small, testing boundaries and escalating gradually. The mind adapts slowly, normalizing unhealthy patterns. Ethical awareness emphasizes early boundary recognition as psychological self-defense. Why smart people are not immune. Intelligence does not protect against manipulation. Emotional vulnerability overrides logic. Highly intelligent individuals may rationalize manipulation rather than recognize it. This reveals that emotional awareness, not IQ, is the strongest psychological defense. Ethical power, awareness without exploitation. True psychological power lies in self-mastery, not control over others. Understanding dark psychology ethically allows individuals to recognize manipulation, protect autonomy, and communicate consciously. The goal is not to outsmart others, but to remain mentally free.